Good morning and welcome to this week's CoE-MaSS seminar. Our speaker this morning is Professor Loyiso Nongxa. He needs very little introduction. He's very well known in the South African mathematics and mathematical sciences community. He grew up in a small town, rural village, and he got his PhD from Oxford. He went on to become the Vice Chancellor of Wits University for 10 years, then was the founding director of CoE-MaSS and is the co-director of IMSA, the new Maths Institute for Mathematical Science and Applications. And I think that is in brief. I would like to hand over to Loyiso.
Thanks, Bruce. Morning, everyone. I see some familiar names as well as some names that I haven't seen before, and welcome to all of you. Let me just, slideshow. Right, Bruce has already told you who I am. And part of this presentation is to inform you about IMSA, which is the Institute for Mathematical Sciences and Applications, of which I'm a co-director and Bruce is the other co-director. For those people who are familiar with the National Graduate Academy, all the things that we've been doing within the Graduate Academy, now we do them under the umbrella of IMSA. So IMSA is a partnership between the CoE-MaSS, which you all know, and this event is hosted by the CoE-MaSS, and it is hosted by Wits University, and the National Graduate Academy for Mathematical and Statistical Sciences that we established in 2017, a group of mathematicians and statisticians from universities across South Africa. And our main objective as the two parties is to work towards the establishment of a formal entity which will be national with the same name, Institute for Mathematical Sciences and Applications, which will succeed the CoE. And it will focus on graduate education, on research, on development, staff development, and other things, as well as innovation, which is a topic that has not been adequately covered in South Africa, namely the role of mathematical sciences in innovation. The purpose of this presentation, first of all, is to raise awareness about other sources of funding, which national as well as international. And these you can apply if maybe you want to undertake a research visit or you're collaborating with other people, both locally and internationally. You want to attend a conference or a workshop and so on. Second one is, I've already touched on it, is to raise awareness about IMSA. And that one of the, I would say, strategic projects of IMSA is to collect information about funding opportunities and make these available through the CoE newsletter. And thirdly, we would like to request people who have information, because maybe what I'm going to present today is a fraction of what is available, that we share this information and disseminate it as widely as possible. Because a situation where people just rely on government funding, especially through the NRF, it is inadequate in terms of meeting the needs of mathematicians and statisticians in South Africa. The fourth one is that we want to empower what we call next generation and early career mathematical scientists. So to empower them to be aware of these funding opportunities and empower them to prepare and submit professional proposals that have stand a great chance of securing grants. So essentially, we are not promising you that we are going to give you money. We're giving you a fishing rod rather than a grilled fish on a plate. You have to go out there and search for the funding that you're looking for. So just quick definitions which I'm going to use. Of course, mathematical sciences covers mathematics, pure and applied. I don't like the distinction between pure and applied, but anyway, that is the case. It includes statistics, it includes operational research, it includes what we call scientific computing and related specialties like data science, machine learning, and so on. By early career mathematical scientists, we mean people who are employed at mathematical sciences academic departments. I've already defined mathematical sciences. First of all, these are people who are holders of, we have finished their PhDs, but have not yet turned 40. So some people finish their PhDs when they are 25. But if you have not yet reached 40, you remain an early career mathematical scientist, unless you have reached the level of at least as an associate professor. Secondly, if you are more than 40 years old, but you're a PhD holder, then you must have obtained your PhD within the last 7 years. Note here that the number of years since receiving a PhD varies. Sometimes it's 5 years, other organizations will be 8 years, other organizations will be 10 years. So please do check the number of years any organization says you have any career PhD finished in the last 5 years, 7 years, and so on. 7 years is not a kind of a formal standard definition, but that's the one we use within IMSA. Below associate professor, and we also include here postdoctoral fellows who are South African citizens. By next generation mathematical scientists, of course, these are mathematical scientists. These are people employed at our universities and are registered for masters and PhDs. Now, just to give you a sense, we collect data as IMSA on various aspects of mathematical sciences. And this data here was obtained from the Human Sciences Research Council, which publishes the data every year. So I was quite taken aback that when you add up all the funding that is available for mathematical sciences, R&D is research and development. When I looked at the data, it's just under 900 million rands. So it could give the impression that there's a lot of money in the system, but that is a bit misleading. This information is requested from universities, government departments, and so on. And you can see here that the major funder, according to this, would be the universities themselves. Own funds would be funds from the universities. And my guess here is that some universities award research incentives for people who have published research articles. So I suspect that part of this is reflected here. Government funds research, and of course, one example here would be the research subsidy that is allocated to universities for publications that have appeared in a list of journals that are recognized by the Department of Higher Education and Training. When I last checked how much is allocated to a university, it's between 150,000 and 200,000 per single authored article. And if there are 2 authors for that article, then the home institution of each author will get half of that, etc. They're mathematicians. Other government sources would probably be the NRF. I think the NRF is under this. Some provinces would allocate money for research and development. Please don't ask me which provinces, because it was not reflected in the report I looked at. Business does allocate funding for research and development. Other South African sources would be, for instance, foundations. And I'll give you an example of a foundation that supports research or postdocs that I haven't seen applications submitted, or very few applications submitted by people in mathematical sciences. And foreign, and you can see here that there were years when the funding from foreign sources was quite low. For the last, I think, 2022, 2023, there's been a significant jump, and I have not been able to figure out where that money came from. But you see here that one of the things we want to do is to grow the amount of funding that comes from international sources. And I'll give you examples of organizations that fund that. One of the reasons for this presentation, but that I'm focusing on what we call next generation and early career academics, is that in my view, the young people in that slide there is emerging researchers. They are underfunded from the NRF, especially if you compare what is invested in other groups of people. Honors, masters, and PhDs, of course, one should put that aside because it's a question of numbers there, and that is a strategic investment that needs to be made. But if you look at other categories, I mean, when I went around and showed this slide, is that you can just compare such as the researchers and emerging researchers. Researchers, I think there are no more than 10 within the system. And emerging researchers in our database, we have more than 200. So 200 people are receiving less than about 10 in the system. Okay, those are the priorities. Now, I mean, we are advising you to think about what will you need funding for? And here is just examples of things that you may need funding for. You may need funding to attend conferences. As an academic, you should make an attempt to attend conferences, or it should be in one of the things you do, like teaching and doing research, that you'll attend conferences. Examples would be those that annual meetings of SASA and SAMS and so on. Do attend international conferences. That's where you get international exposure, and people outside South Africa get to know about what work you're doing. Attending local and international workshops. I'm more inclined, okay, that this is an old man who has got some views which are off the track. I'm more inclined to say that, as far as I'm concerned, it's more important probably to attend workshops which are focused on certain themes that might be relevant to your work, rather than conferences where topics are all over the show and you might not be interested or don't even understand the terminology of that. You might need money, or need money to go on sabbatical leave, to visit somebody at another institution, either within South Africa or internationally, or hosting a visitor. Some people organize events, workshops or seminars, and some people organize events for postgraduate students. Now, this slide here has a list of things where within the NGA, people would ask whether they could get funding for publication costs, for license fees, etc., 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 whether we have money for postgraduate students. Personally, maybe from the perspective of the NGA, because I was involved with that, still am, since 2017, is that our response would be, some funders would say that these are the responsibility of your institution. But let me quickly point out that the CoE and NITEX, they do fund postgraduate scholarships. I'm not saying that for IMSA, we don't fund, for instance, postgraduate scholarships. CoE has to fund scholarships. So this is an information sharing session, but here I'm giving you sources where you can get information about funding opportunities. Your university would have a research office. Find out where it is and go and find out from them where you can find information on funding. Your faculty office would probably have information on that. Your school or department, sometimes or always there would be information that is posted on notice boards, either within your department, within your faculty, or an institutional notice board. I strongly recommend that you subscribe to the newsletters of National Institute for Theoretical and Computational Sciences and the Center of Excellence for Mathematical and Statistical Sciences, because most of the information from IMSA will be disseminated through the newsletter of the CoE-MaSS. So make sure that you subscribe to that. There's an organization called the Research Connect, and you have to pay a license. VITS has a license for Research Connect, and you can find information there on the available funding opportunities as well as open calls. Ask people who have received funding, who funded them. And those of you who have received funding, please do share that information with others, especially with IMSA through the CoE. And I've already pointed out that we want to provide you with this information. There are people that share information with us, with me, and I'm very thankful for that. Potential funders locally would be the National Research Foundation, the Department of Higher Education and Training, Center of Excellence. Now, I've already said that the funding that National Graduate Academy is managed under IMSA. Okay, not managed, I must be careful. Just check with IMSA, okay? NITEX, I've already said that NITEX funds certain activities. There are foundations and trusts that fund mathematical sciences. And specifically, I would like to highlight or bring your attention to the Oppenheimer Memorial Trust. I am a trustee. I've been a trustee maybe for the last 8 years. They do ask me to evaluate sometimes the applications that have been submitted. We do get data on applications that have been received from institutions and by disciplines. And there have been very, very few applications submitted by people in mathematical sciences. I can recall maybe one person who got a postdoc from OMT and somebody else got a grant for sabbatical leave. And both of them, I'd encourage them to apply through the OMT. Already talked about that. Now, with regard to NITEX, last time I gave this presentation, I invited the director of NITEX. Do consider joining NITEX as an associate. I may be wrong on this, but I suspect that there are certain funding opportunities where you have to be an associate in order to be considered. If I'm wrong, I do apologize for that. Now, international funders, mathematical sciences, societies, research institute internationally, there are funding agencies internationally, there are international foundations, and I'm going to give you some examples of this. And note that you should visit their website, and that they publish sometimes newsletters and magazines which have information on funding opportunities. We will make this the list of the magazines available together with this presentation in the newsletter. So the R&D expenditure in mathematical sciences, I'm not going to dwell on this. Universities, of course, spend money or invest in research in mathematical sciences. Businesses do invest in mathematical sciences. And so on. And here, the interpretation here is that this would be research that is conducted within those organizations. And I was quite taken aback that within government departments, there's very little investment in R&D in mathematical sciences. It's something that we should follow up on. I mean, a Department of Telecoms, one would expect that it conducts some research. Maybe not original research, but finding out what's going on, etc., in those disciplines. Quickly, just to remind you of the funding opportunities that we have been advertising within the CoE newsletter. Research in teams, we found early career and next generation academics to get together. They can have a senior academic being part of that team, but we will only fund next generation and early career academics. But the requirement here is that you must submit a manuscript within a year of being funded. Then there are the joint research and postgraduate training networks. We give a startup grant of 200,000 rand, or we plan to give 200,000 rand. A group that we funded to get started about 3-4 years ago asked me if they could apply for funding to expand that. And I refer this to my colleagues. I'm sympathetic to that. Now, there are a few people who contacted us and said, oh yeah, they want to apply for this international research collaboration because there's a lot of money there. I mean, they didn't say because there's a lot of money. But here is that this will be given to an existing group, not individuals. And I've aligned existing that you must provide evidence that you have been working together. Yeah? Either you have organized workshops together or you have published together and so on. You can't just get together, let's say, within a week and say, we are a research group. There must be evidence that you have done something together. Previously, the NGA had funding for mobility. Those funds are depleted. But you'll see later on in this presentation that there are a number of opportunities, or there are a number of funding agencies that support international travel. On this slide, I'm listing grants or funding that is only available to historically disadvantaged institutions. And this was the requirement. Okay. Let me put it this way. When we put together the proposal, we specifically said that there was something unique about supporting historical disadvantaged institutions. Staff replacement, this is the same as under UCDP. For those of you who were involved with the NGA, people who are on the verge of submitting their thesis can apply for staff replacement and take time off and focus on their research. Secondly, those who are registered for PhDs, with a recommendation from their supervisor, they can, if their supervisor is elsewhere, they can apply for funding to spend some time with their supervisor. Or if their supervisor say, by attending the SAMS conference or SASA, it will be of benefit to you, then we can do that funding. Thirdly, there are a few academics at HDIs who, because of supervisory capacity within our system, have international supervisor. We'll provide them with funding to visit their international supervisors. Fourthly, there are people who are teaching with a 4-year degree, honors, and are registered for masters. We plan to bring them together and give them tips or assist them, advise in terms of writing their master's thesis. And as I said, that this is only available to historical disadvantaged institutions. Okay, I'm going to skip this, but basically it says that those people who happen to be highly rated, P-rated, and later become A-rated, one of the common traits that they share is that they have had international exposure. So that's why we put emphasis on people to think about not only focusing locally, but looking at working with people elsewhere. Department of Higher Education and Training has 3 funding instruments. One is the Future Professors Program, aimed at people who will be, maybe within 2 years, 3 years, okay, that's come from me, can be promoted to associate professor or full professor. Okay? And UCDP, there's something called the Staff Doctoral Program. It's aimed at those people who want to register for PhDs. And Junior Research Fellows, it's early career academics, but these must be at historically disadvantaged institutions or universities of technology. Importantly here is that you cannot apply directly to the Department of Higher Education and Training, you must be nominated by your university. So if you want to be considered for any of these three, talk to your HOD. Say, I heard that there's a future professors program or USDP or junior fellows, and be bold and tell them that you want to be nominated. You want the university to nominate you. Be bold. Right. NRF has many funding opportunities, and here I've just highlighted the Tutuka and the BAAP, the Black Academics Advancement Program. But if you go to the NRF website, and there's a document there called Call for Proposals for Funding in 2025 and 2026. You'll find a long list of funding opportunities, some earmarked for next generation and early career academics. Now, again, these require nomination by your home institution. So now I'll move off to those that you can apply for. I've used acronyms here, and you'll find the information about what this stands for in the document that we'll make available through the newsletter. London Mathematical Society has a program called Mentoring African Research in Mathematics. You'll find this on the London Mathematical Society website. Grant of about £4,000, which translates to about 80, 90, between 80 and 100,000 rand. There's an institute called the Clay Mathematics Institute. It is housed at Oxford University. It supports travel to prestigious conferences like the International Congress of Mathematicians. You can apply to them and say that you want to attend the annual SAMS conference. They want, there's the European Women in Mathematics. Go to their website, provide 600 euros for travel and or accommodation. IMU stands for International Mathematical Union, and CDC stands for the Commission for Developing Countries. There are some people who have applied, have been successful in getting funding to attend conferences from the CDC. OWSD stands for the Organization for Women in Science for Development. So this is only support women to attend. It supports people who have won the awards to attend the conference. A similar one is the L'Oreal UNESCO. You'll find, you'll find the document that will make available has the web links. Okay, I've already described the LMS MAR. They support research visits. IARO, I became aware of this when I was doing the research, desktop research, is International Association of Research Universities. And unfortunately, only UCT in South Africa is a member of IARO, but it provides funding for collaboration research visit. IMU CDC that I've already described has got the ABEL visiting scholars and also and then IMU, together with Simons, have got travel fellowships for people to undertake research visits. $15,000 is close to 100,000 rand. I'm sure that a number of you have attended SIMPA schools. SIMPA is an international organization funded by France. Google SIMPA and you will find their website and search for funding for research days in developing countries. The amounts vary there. DFG, AIMS is the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, and they've got centers in different countries in Africa. And in South Africa, it's in Luxembourg. They've got a partnership with the German equivalent of the NRF, and that is called the DFG. But in order to be considered for that, you have to be supported by a director of an AIM center. And I've informally spoken with AIM South Africa and requested them if they could support applications by people from South African universities to apply for those grants. TWAS is the World Academy of Science. DFG I've already described. Again, travel grants for people to go to a German university. The Isaac Newton Institute is at Cambridge. They support, they've got fellowships called Ramunajan Fellowships. And you can apply for these if you want to spend some time attending their semester programs, which is thematic. Remember, one was statistical data analysis, etc. London Mathematical Society, LMS, something called Scheme 5. And there have been a few people, especially those that attended our pathways to a successful academic career, who applied for and succeeded in, okay, the application has to come from a UK collaborator. Right? So in order to benefit from this, you must have somebody at a UK university that you are planning to visit or that you can host. ICTP is the International Center for Theoretical Physics. It's based at Trieste in Italy. It's been around for a long time. It was started by a Nobel Prize winner in physics. Do consider joining as an associate because that gives you the opportunity to go and spend some time at their center or at some of designated universities which would be in Europe. I've already talked about SIMBA and ICTP. They've got funding for research in pairs at a European university. Okay, spoken about LMS, MARM, I've spoken about IARU, I've spoken about AIMS DFG, I've described TWAS DFG. Now, London Mathematical Society also has got collaboration grants that you can apply for. And the last one there, INRIA, is a French organization which focuses mainly on computer science, artificial intelligence, data science. You can apply up to 36,000 euros, which is a lot of money. I can't convert there, but a euro is about, let's say 20 rand. So that comes to about a lot of money, more than 500,000. All right. SIMPA ICTP, I've already talked about the SIMPA and ICTP. Horizon Europe has many, many funding opportunities. I can't do justice to that. You just have to visit their website and spend some time searching what meets your requirements. There was an information sharing session organized by Vis Enterprise, but open to people from all South African universities about a month ago. Yesterday, there was an information sharing session by DAD. DAD is a German funding organization, and they gave information. There are a few people, I mean, well, maybe some people attend as groups, but when I looked at those that had logged in, I was a bit disappointed at the low numbers. Of course, it's during lecturing time, so I should be more understanding. MITAX is based in Canada, and in fact, MITAX is one of the organizations that can host postgraduate students, PhDs and postdocs, early career academics on a research visit. And you can apply for this through a program at the NRF called Global Knowledge Partnership Program. And the last one on that slide is AFOX, is Africa Oxford. Now, you can apply, I mean, it's a 12 months fellowship where you have to have an Oxford partner. And in this case, for people in mathematical sciences, it would be somebody at the Mathematical Institute that you are working on a research project with. And then there's a requirement that you spend at least 2 months at Oxford and staying at one of the Oxford colleges. For obvious reasons, I would strongly recommend that you consider that and for the Oxford experience. We are talking to people at Oxford to see if we can partner with them and jointly fund these visiting fellowships. Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions is another kind of funding instrument with many funding opportunities. And in this case, they fund postdocs. I've already spoken about TWAS, the World Academy of Sciences. The Royal Society in the UK has programs, has funding opportunities for early career academics who aspire to be recognized as leaders in their fields, and I'm sure all of you aspire to be that. And the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council is the equivalent of the NRF, but it's in the UK, and it funds postdocs. The other funder of postdocs is the Liverpool Trust. I've spoken about EMU-CDC, and I've also made reference to the OWSD, which supports women. And then the Newton International Fellowship. Maybe I should just say here that there's a lot of money here. 280,000 British pounds is a lot of money. It's about 4 million, is it? Yeah. But anyway, it's a maximum, not. So you have to put in an application and justify that. But you would only consider this if, let's say, you want to take unpaid leave from your university, and then you can use this money as salary while you are on this fellowship. Already said that. Don't be angry at me that I've given you a list of acronyms and so on. This presentation will make it available as well as the full names of what does OWSD stand for. You'll find that in the document that will be posted on the CoE newsletter. Quickly, I just looked at, you have to keep on visiting these websites. So I looked at some of them. For instance, conference support from EMU, the closing date for this year is 1st of October for a conference that will start after the 1st of February, etc. Isaac Newton Fellowship, closing date is on Sunday. The closing date is on Sunday. So spend tomorrow working on your submission. But if it has to be supported by your department, I don't know. I mean, I've not looked at that. But it's, I mean, again, I would rank the Cambridge experience many ranks below the Oxford experience. But do consider applying for that. If Sunday is too late, consider applying next year for 2027. European Research Council, the calls open once a year. So again, you have to want to look out for that. London Mathematical Society, Mathematics in Africa, there's a closing date on the 15th of September, and another one, 22nd of January, and so on. EMU-CDC, there will be 3 calls per year, and EMU-Simons, there will be 4 calls per year. So just some advice here on how to put together your application. Check the funding guidelines. Please check the funding guidelines. Funders get angry if you ask for something that they don't fund. They don't get angry. I'm just being an old man who's cantankerous. So if there are no funding guidelines, do some research and find out if anybody has received funding from that. It could be somebody in your department, even a senior academic. Always be clear about what a donor will fund and what a donor will not fund. For instance, if you are applying for a travel grant, most probably a donor will not fund the cost for visa application. Maybe you are at the University of Limpopo, you have to travel to Gauteng to apply for a visa. Most of them are not going to give you money for that. So please don't use the grant for a visa application if it's not going to be funded and so on. Check the maximum that you can apply for, and last last bullet point is about reporting. It's very, very, very important that you submit a report because most funders want to find out whether you have actually done what you said you were going to do. Now, it's important because if you don't submit a report, it's unlikely that you'll be considered for funding in future by that organization. But it's not only a blemish on yourself, it's also a blemish on, let's say, people from your university or people from South Africa. If we earn the reputation that there's an academic from this university, we gave them money, they never responded, it would also mean possibly that people applying from South Africa will be looked at differently. Please don't include things, I've already touched on this, that are not funded. Don't include things that are obviously not related to the proposal, and so on. Don't, where possible, you submit. This applies generally when you're putting together a budget, because some funders are not just going to give you the lump sum. You have to motivate how you're going to spend the budget, and so on. Don't spend the grant differently, okay? And for instance, if there were line items, so much for travel, so much for accommodation, but then let's say your university gives you money for travel and you decide that, oh, I'm going to use this line item for something else. Don't do that. If you said you're going to use the money for travel, use it for travel, or tell them that you are no longer going to use it for travel. Can you use it for something else? So what are the next steps? Okay, this is the fourth time that I'm saying we're going to make some of these links that are in the document. Some of them will return an error message. Again, don't be angry with me. I spent months on end putting the document together. Do make a plan. Make a plan is Afrikaans for make a plan. When I first did mathematics, I did mathematics in Afrikaans at secondary school. Please continually check which calls are open. Thirdly, plan ahead. Have your information ready. Some of the information, standard information that may be required. If you're going, most of these possibly are for research. Just be clear about what research you're going to be conducting over the next, whatever, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Okay? So that when you are putting together your submission, your research proposal is already prepared. You just cut and paste. Okay? Always seek advice of senior people to look at what you have written. We will be hosting some grant proposal writing workshops online. And you can see here that some of these are available for people outside of South Africa. Let's say Scheme 5 can only be applied for by people in the UK, which means that actively look for collaborators in countries where you cannot, my English, for which you don't qualify because they are in South Africa, but somebody from that country can qualify. Okay, I'll stop here. Just 1 minute over time, and open for questions and comments and input, most importantly.
Thank you, Loyiso, for inspiring us with your hope about getting money. This question. Online questions?
Just a note. To those attending in person, we are very sorry. One of the mics has issues. So if you have any questions, just please try coming up to the front to ask. This one works perfectly fine.
Question. Online questions?
Maybe somebody who has kind of received a grant or applied for a grant from these, maybe can just share with us 1 or 2 comments about what to be on the lookout for. I'm not putting pressure on them, but I know a few people who have logged in, who have actually applied for this.
I would like to reiterate what Loyiso said about there were if you have had a grant or you received a grant, you have to submit your report. That is not optional. In fact, many grant agencies can even ask you to return your funds if you do not submit that report. And the other point is, you do not use the funds for what is not eligible. That is misappropriation of funds. And that's quite serious. So those two items, be aware of that. If you get funding, you have responsibility. And that's to use the funds the way they were allocated and to report on those funds. Question for me. I see lots of people looking happy here. So that must mean they saw lots of ideas of places where they can apply for funding. There's a comment from the audience which is yeah. Loyiso has put together a good list there of starting points for looking for funding. And yes, you have to hunt down the funding. NRF is not going to fund every Norris university. They don't have the money.
Good morning. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
This is Anna Kaduma Gumbi here. And I just want to make a comment about receiving a grant and how important it is to follow the instructions that one is given. It is actually not just to satisfy the funders, but it's also good information to the funders as to what experiences were achieved or were received by those who were grant recipients. And it is always a good thing to give information as much as one can on what the grant was used for, but the experiences of those who used this. Early this year, we received grant funding for an event from CoE, the ASA Data Fest, American Statistical Association Data Fest. And in our report, we've tried to, as much as possible, detail what the funding was used for, but the benefits that were accrued by those who received funding. And we had our students who we recorded videos of just to give that feedback to make sure that we understand the importance of this funding. I thought I should share that.
Thank you. And another message is, don't get disheartened. If you apply for funding from one funding agency and you don't get it, that doesn't mean you need to pack up and go and sulk. You get up and you move on. You look at, often the grant funders will send comments on your application. Certainly if you apply for big grants, they give substantial feedback. Read their feedback and listen to what they are saying, because they often have highlighted weaknesses in your application. So use the information they've given you to improve your next application. So it's a process. And you have to apply for as many grants as you can that fit what you are doing and areas you want to go and work in and people you want to work with.
Yeah, just to reinforce the point that is made by Professor Watson. Fundraising, okay, applying for grants is not like somebody will just, oh yeah, here's money. Okay, it's tough. It can be discouraging, and we are doing that within IMSA, CoE, and NGA, as you know. I mean, and there will be times when people don't even respond to us. We request meetings to go and present, and they don't even respond to our emails. And sometimes say that, oh, this is not worth it. I'm retired. Let me just go and look after sheep in the Eastern Cape. So what I'm saying, what Professor Watson is saying is that success is not guaranteed. Sometimes, I mean, you try, you don't get money and so on because the demand probably is higher than the funds that are available. So please don't give up. Keep trying.
Thank you, Prof. We are having issues with postgraduate funding. At some point at UKZM, the postgraduate students were not paying any fees. And they had quite a number of students that they managed to produce. And then recently I read, I think it is Northwest University, the principal there, he's also claiming that the postgraduate students will not be paying any fees. Is it possible that somehow you could influence all the universities that postgrad students do not pay any fees? Because what we found is that our postgrad students, they spend more time trying to find ways of making money for their own livelihoods, for food and rent and accommodation, instead of spending more time on their books. And therefore, the production of their own research becomes weakened because they're spending more time on that one. So we need assistance with that, because even if we apply for these funds, sometimes it depends on who you are as a supervisor to be able to get the fund for the postgrad students you're having. So if there could be a way of saying that all postgrad students, especially in mathematics and applied mathematics, because our country indeed has been shown that we are not producing enough of the mathematicians, and therefore we need to find a way of building up this cohort of people.
Yeah, point taken. I agree with the sentiments you are expressing. The question of postgraduate bursaries and scholarships is a massive one. I think the NRF, when I was on the NRF board, maybe funded about between 12 and 15% of the number of students in the system. Right? If, for instance, in mathematics, there would be about 250 PhDs in the system registered. NRF would fund about 10% of that, or 15%. I've already mentioned the Oppenheimer Memorial Trust. It has got a scholarship program, very, very, very competitive. And it's one of the things that is part of our discussion within IMSA and CoE. Okay, CoE is a partner within IMSA. But what are the other ways we can leverage funding? Because the funding that is there is just not enough. So yeah, I mean, when you talk about other universities, I am in touch with people at University of South Africa. The CEO happens to be a mathematician, and whenever there's a opportunity to raise issues with USAF, University of South Africa, I do it through that channel. But the point is taken and is well recognized. Thanks. Dr. Chinedu. Sorry, Bruce, you're sharing now.
Especially is there, not in the room, so it must be online.
It's online, yeah.
Say something.
Okay, Prof, thank you. Thank you, Prof, for the presentation. I just want to pick up from where what Prof. Bruce said earlier, and you also commented on. So So let's see a scenario. Suppose I just came across a funding opportunity and the deadline is tomorrow. Is it better to just put up any what I can put up between now and tomorrow and submit, or I let it go? Because I wouldn't, between now and tomorrow, I may not be able to put up something very strong, in my own opinion. Maybe it's something that I'm not satisfied with. So I could just let it go and say, okay, let me prepare for the next funding season. Maybe this is funding that happens once in a year. So so that I can have enough time to put up a proposal that is very strong. So which is better, let it go or just put up and try? I mean, the worst thing that would happen is that I won't get the funding, but at least I'll get the experience. But then again, I'm worried about who is reading my proposal. It could be that the person would say this person is not serious. I mean, you put up something very superficial. What my own opinion is that I would rather let it go. But I'm just leaving it to you to tell me if this is a good idea.
You are referring to the Ramunajan Fellowship.
No, I'm saying in general now. I'm speaking in general because
Oh, I see.
so I picked from the fact that Prof. Bruce said that I mean when you apply for funding and you don't get it, you shouldn't feel bad. You should try again and again and again. So I could see a funding. I'm not prepared, maybe because of the shortage of time. I could just say, okay, let me just try. Even if I don't get it, it's fine. Let me try next time. But then I'm worried about what I'm putting down, what people are reading. So what is the best way going if I come across such situation?
Bruce, and I'll follow you.
I can give you one example, and that was a bilateral grant that I got with Tunisia. It was a 3-year NRF Tunisian grant with the Tunisian government. And we only became aware of it about 3 days before the closing date. And bilateral grants are extremely complicated. We spent approximately 36 hours of Skype calls in those 3 days. We put the grant together and we got the grant. And it produced 3 years of excellent collaboration between our group and the Tunisian team. And if we had not tried it, if we just said, well, we only have 3 days, we won't get it, we'll leave it. We would not have that. And they haven't run Tunisia calls for quite a few years since. So in actual fact, it was very good that we applied when we did, because that was a one-off call. So my advice is, do your very best and get it in. Obviously, if you just can't get it, if you can't get to an application that looks vaguely respectable, don't do it. But if it is feasible to put together a decent application, clear your diary and do the job. Otherwise, you won't get it.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Bruce is saying, that I mean, taking it not a different angle, just something else. That's why it is important, one, to reflect on what will you need funding for, right? And keep that in mind. And secondly, what information will you require when you apply for X, Y, Z? And as much as possible, have that information ready. I mean, if, just a silly example, if you are going to travel, if you want to go overseas, then surely you can't think of applying for a passport when you are going to apply for the grant. So if you are thinking about traveling overseas and you don't have a passport as we are here today, go and apply for a passport on Monday. I mean, just an extreme example. But have your information, and that's why having a plan about what your research, because in most cases it's about research visits. what research are you going to be conducting over the next, let's say, 3 years, whatever horizon you give yourself, and write that properly, write it out, and consult senior people like, let's say, Professor Watson, to comment on what you have written, right? Because they also serve as reviewers of application. So they know what kind of quality is expected. So be prepared beforehand and not wait for a call.
And on that, also look at projects that you want to work on and who you want to work on, who you want to work with on them in the next few years. So you have a plan. If you don't get this grant, you possibly can't work with that person. But there's another project you have that works with another person in another country where there might be a grant. So to some extent, yes, we have academic freedom, but you don't necessarily have financial freedom. And you work, sometimes you can fund things, you can personally fund things that you don't have funding for, but other times you can only work on projects where you get funding for. So and that's the reality. So yes, governments do to some extent direct the research that you're doing because they want various areas funded and are prepared to fund them. And if you're not going to do that, then you have to sometimes fund yourself. So yeah, you have to look at what funding is available and what it is for, and if that is overlaps with the research you want to do on various of your projects. If it is, go for the grants.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say, Dr. Chinedu, who asked that question, is one of the people who obtained the London Mathematical Society Scheme 5 grant. So just give me an example of somebody who has actually applied for something that probably you're not aware of. And secondly, in terms of organizing workshops, there's an international center called International Center for Mathematical Sciences, which funds workshops. And he and Dr. Matthews is here online as well. They submitted a proposal a few months ago to host an international workshop in South Africa. So I'm very proud of them. We're very proud of them.
And
Thank you very much, Prof.
Again, as well to a workshop that Timothy is organizing. Timothy is quite well versed in organizing funding and organizing his projects. He's a good example of doing what's required to fund your research and getting grants.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for the presentation.
David, Prof. Mason has a hold on there.
If there are no further questions, then I have to run and go and collect my passport for a visa.
As you know, we organized the MaSS Industry Study Group here. Many of the organizations were described were academic, which you know many organizations that might fund interaction with industry, you know, rather than between academics. For example, the Oppenheimer Memorial Trust, you know, Ernest Oppenheimer, that's industry. Would they be interested in that and what others would you consider? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David, for that. In fact, when you look at the list of funders that we have identified, you find that there's a big gap in terms of funders from industry, and would like to fill that gap. We know that there are entities that support workshops and so on from industry. So would like to fill that gap if people that have information around that.
Whenever we apply, we say industry must pay for this, must funding. We should leave it at that, but it's difficult to make that initial contact.
Thank you. And Thank you, Loyiso, for a very interesting and informative seminar. And we wish you all the very best with your visa application. Hopefully they grant your visa and returning your passport.
Before you go, Kevin, I say, that you use the wrong apostrophe in mother plan. It's the wrong way.
Abdul said that you, that there's something wrong with your apostrophe in Makaplan.
Thank you.
All the best.